Hi everyone, my name is Geoff Paine and I want to welcome you all to the Change Room. Just a quick show of hands, who has ever been to the Change Room before? Thank you both for coming. The rest of you are newbies, so thank you very much for coming along. So my job at BehaviourWorks Australia is content curator, so I help explain and showcase some of the research that we do. And this is a sort of a co-production between BehaviourWorks Australia and Australia Reads. I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. This land was never ceded and its history never told. That's changing and we're part of that change. As I say, I'm here to showcase the research that we're doing, and today is a double act, a co-pro between Australia Reads and BehaviourWorks Australia. I would introduce both of our speakers, but that's mansplaining, and we don't do that anymore. So I will introduce Anna Burkey and Breanna Wright. I don't know who's going first. It's okay.
Hello.
Hello,
Hi.
Anna Burkey from Australia Reads.
I am Anna Burkey from Australia Reads. It's nice to meet you. I am going to give a little bit of the context just to kind of set the scene. So if any of you who has read the report, Understanding Australian Readers? Very good. You are very dedicated. It is 119 pages long. So good job, everyone. Great. If you haven't, then you can get it through the QR code. And I wanted to give you a little bit of information about how this came about. So you may know that Australia has the opportunity to reap incredible benefits from reading. It helps our health, it helps anxiety levels, it supports social cohesion, it helps us sleep better, it brings our blood pressure down, there's a physical health benefit, it helps us bond with our community and our families, incredibly important. But you may not know that Australian reading rates are declining at a fairly rapid rate, particularly amongst younger age groups. And so Australia Reads was formed to do something about that and look at how collectively, as a book industry, as educators, librarians, practitioners, marketers, how can we get together and be on a mission to get more Australians reading more books more often. So that's how we came about. All we had really to start with was this general feeling that people aren't reading as much as they used to. Wouldn't it be great if they read more? And the Australian Bureau of Statistics broadly telling us that 40% of Australians read on a fairly regular basis. I'm going to be pretty sure that some of you are in this room, some of us are in this room, are in that particular bucket. We also know some of the scary statistics around a third of Australians of various age groups don't read at all, didn't read a single book in the last 12 months. And then there was this really foggy bucket by nature of maths that meant that 30% in the middle we didn't really know much about, they maybe read occasionally. This was the extent of our knowledge. If we are going to turn reading rates around, we need better information and we need to understand what works best to reach those people. So we're interested in the 60%, a little bit more than we're interested in the 40%, and hopefully some of you in this room are tonight, but that's where we came to work with BehaviourWorks to look at how can we start to get a lot more understanding of what's going on in this picture. And that is where we hand over to Breanna.
Breanna. Breanna Wright, ladies and gentlemen, from BehaviourWorks Australia. Will you thank Anna Burkey for a beautiful introduction, Breanna?
Yes, so I'm Breanna. I'm the researcher from BehaviourWorks who oversaw this research. And so we went from the three big buckets of readers to these 6 segments that we found through the research. Now, most of you have probably heard or read the report before, so we're not going to do a huge deep dive into each of these segments, but we're going to do a rapid fire overview of each of them. So we have avid readers who are avid. They read daily, they start new books really quickly, they have very few barriers when it comes to engaging with reading. So they love it.
I read every day. I've got about 100 books in my to-be-read pile right beside my bed. In fact, my bed is made up of books I've read. It's that big.
We have engaged readers who still read very regularly, often multiple times a week. They start books quite quickly, but the main thing that differentiated them from avid readers was they want to be reading even more. They're super enthusiastic, and they do face barriers. They have competing priorities, and they struggle with not quite having enough leisure time to devote to reading.
Oh, I've got a couple of books on the go. I just wish I had more time to read.
We have ambivalent readers, who are my favourite segment because they're kind of confusing and difficult to understand. So they have really inconsistent reading habits, everything from maybe once a month or so to a couple of times a year. The thing that really kind of holds them together as a group is they're undecided about how much they like reading. So they kind of like it, they see some benefits for it, but they're not quite sure if they want to prioritise it over other over other leisure behaviours. So they're really kind of on the fence, which is really interesting from a behavioural perspective, because I want to tip them over into reading is fantastic, let's be an engaged reader maybe.
I still don't really know whether I want to read a book or not. I think I do. Maybe.
And we have aspirational readers. These guys read quite infrequently, maybe just a couple of times a year or so, but they are eager to read more. They definitely reported that they would like to be reading more, but they struggle with lots of barriers, especially from competing leisure activities, not having enough time, not wanting to necessarily prioritise reading over all of the other things that they also enjoy.
I would read more if I had the time. I read a book on holidays, can't remember when. If I could just put pause on my life, I would definitely read more.
And then we have lapsed readers. These guys are not what we currently classify as readers, so they haven't read a book in the past 12 months, but they are fond of reading, they used to enjoy it, they would like to do it again at some point, but there are lots of barriers in terms of lack of time. They reported some kind of capability barriers in terms of having some difficulty maybe concentrating or focusing on books, and they also struggled to find books that might interest them.
I remember reading books back in the day, but I don't know what got in the way. Life, kids. I was happy then.
And our uninterested non-readers. So these guys don't like reading. They're not particularly fond of it. They're not really doing it. They may do it again at some point. They weren't completely bleak about reading. There were some rays of hope. But in general, they don't have many positive associations with reading. They don't have many fond memories of reading. And they had the most barriers when it comes to reading. So maybe we can get them to read again, but there's lots of barriers to overcome there.
Yeah, reading's never been a thing for me. Just feels like homework.
And back to Anna.
Yes, and the nasty stat that sits within the red bucket is that 0% of that group can ever remember one single positive experience with a book in their whole life. So it talks to the importance of a really good early experience and modelling of reading behind. Which
Yes, although there's, sorry.
Yeah, please, this is why we're doing a double
I've been
act.
thinking about since the launch that I wanted to add to that statistic, which is there's something, our memories are not super reliable. So there's something called kind of recall bias, where, you know, how we feel currently can influence how we remember past experiences. So I think it would be quite interesting to understand in that non-reader group if they have truly never had positive reading experiences, or if there is something that has happened to their perception of reading that's influencing how they remember reading. So I think that would be interesting to tease apart at some point.
Yes, so this is where we do the double act where the researcher says, we'd like some more research on this thing.
That's basically all I say.
And the industry goes, we have enough information to go on, let's go. And it's somewhere in between the two, probably, yes. So from the perspective of those of us who work to get more people to read, so how many people would go in that category? How many people are librarians, educators? 80% of the room. Excellent, great. So we've got a more nuance now from these types of segments, which were all based on age 16 plus. And I think we can probably make some good judgments about age 12 plus, but officially the data is age 16 plus, but really gives us that sense of where do we focus. So if we are going to start to get people to read, not every technique will work for every group. And therefore, we've got to think about where can we have the most impact, because as we all know, the book world, not known for being high rollers, most of the organisations in the literary space. So we've got really finite resources. We have to be really targeted about where we deploy them. We can't do everything for everyone at the same time. We've got to stagger it. So this gives us an opportunity to really think about which segments do we want to target, how do we want to reach them? And tonight is part of that, start kind of opening up the conversation to think about how might we do that together as an industry, and where can we best put all of our efforts so that we can collectively come together about campaigns, about programs that might then work at a national scale. So that's kind of where we're headed. And there will be time for us to have drinks and chew the fat and ask hard questions later as well. But for now, we're going to
Absolutely. I should have said there will be time for questions. And yes, we'll encourage you to enjoy the refreshments and speak to our Australia Reads people and our BehaviourWorks Australia people. I'm going to ask you to get your phones out because we're going to poll you. So we know that you do everything you can to get people to read, but sometimes we are witness to or on the receiving end of, or find ourselves saying or doing things that don't encourage people to read. So what we're doing now is wrong answers only. What do you think puts people off reading? So basically, hopefully this should come up on your phone where you can type answers in, hit submit, and they will come up on the screen. What is it that you think we do or say that puts people off reading? You might call some books trashy, for instance. This is the stuff that you've come across in your day-to-day. What is it? Making it mandatory, yes, that's right. That would be possibly the last category. Someone said I had to read the book. Talking about the movie version. Oh, judgy about genre. Snobbery, yes. The texture of the paper. You have to read the book, just feel it. Yeah, okay, time. Tiny or horrible typeface. Don't read it, it's in Comic Sans. I wouldn't even touch it. There's a few mea culpas, guilty. Wow, not deep enough.
Definitely the literary books one. Hear that
Yeah,
a lot.
yeah.
Maybe if they read this, then they'll read a real book. I've heard that a fair few times.
Dismissing certain genres.
Oh, you should read. That's another one. Just you should do this great thing.
You should
not,
do this
not
great
why
thing.
it's relevant for
Overcomplicated.
you or anything. Just you should read. You should
That's
read
right.
more.
Cost, it's a chore. An off-putting sounding book. Oh, okay. Oh, yes, worthy. This will make you a better human being. Forcing them to read. You are not leaving the premises until you've got chapter 1 read.
Isn't that just school, Geoff?
That's right. Fines. And if you don't read it, I'll fine you. Yeah, books are heavy. That's right. $10 words, committed language. Oh, I wonder what that means. Yes, forcing the books that we like on people rather than the ones that their tastes are.
Yes, and all of those comments, especially around, forcing particular types on books or recommending things that we like. There's a couple of things in behavioural science around kind of the curse of knowledge and people who work in the industry having so much information and experience that it can be difficult to remember what it's like if you're kind of a novice in the space, and it might be really overwhelming to have really intimidating book suggestions.
Oh yes, graphic novels, audiobooks, ebooks. Did you include audiobooks and ebooks in the?
We did, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And graphic novels.
Not enough pictures.
Occasionally we hear, is audiobooks really reading though? Which is an interesting one. I think it probably is an open question.
Yeah.
Some really good science on the benefits that you still get from audiobooks, including vocabulary, empathy, different person narrators, and so forth. So it's still very much belongs in the reading category.
All right, this is fantastic. I'm going to move on now so that Breanna can talk about the reading journey and book browsing.
Yes. So for those of you who have looked at the report, you will remember that we have the whole reading journey from finding books, getting books, starting to read, continuing to read, and kind of reflecting and sharing behaviours after finishing a book. For the purposes of tonight, we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into the finding books phase of that journey because it's one of the main kind of contact points between readers and the book industry when they are coming to find books and get books in wherever they are doing that, whether it's a library, a bookstore, or online. So when we looked at those behaviours in particular across our different segments, we found that there are some notable differences that we want to be aware of. For our avid and our engaged readers, these guys are relatively similar in how they browse. They find browsing easy, they're pretty confident about where they're going to get books. They prioritise finding books. So finding books is a behaviour of its own, and they prioritise doing that behaviour, not just reading, which is really important because you can't read books you haven't found to read. Unless they like magically appear. Yeah. Maybe you have like a very bookish partner and they just put things on your pillow. That would be great. The only real differences between these segments is that our avid readers, when they're choosing books that they might want to read, are a bit more focused on authors and series, and our engaged readers were a bit more focused on word of mouth. But it's a pretty minor difference. Overall, they're pretty similar. And what that means is that these guys are pretty confident browsers to the point where they have probably developed unconscious competence. They probably don't even realise that this is something that they are good at. And the thing I really want you to take away from this is that browsing is not just a behaviour, it's a skill. You can be good at it and you can not be good at it. So knowing what books you like, knowing how to find books you like is actually a skill. Being able to go into a library and know which section is going to appeal to you, being able to read a blurb and know if that book is going to be something you'll probably like is actually a skill that most people aren't aware of. So these two segments are likely to come in prepared. They might come in with a list, they might come in looking for the authors that they like, or they might just be wanting to browse like a particular genre. But they've got a plan, unless they're just like looking around, but like they know what they're doing. They're much more likely to kind of keep their finger on the pulse, is that the saying?
Yep.
About like books that are coming out, things that they might enjoy, knowing if authors that they like have new books coming out, etc. So bookstores that have lots of options are great for them because they're confident in navigating those spaces. They like lots of options. It's a familiar space for them. And most importantly, it's not overwhelming for them. They love it. And they are very confident in navigating that and finding what they want. And the report showed that these guys find books that they want to read all the time. So
can I stop there for 1 second and just do audience participation again? How many people would put themselves in the avid or engaged reader category from this room?
I'm shocked.
90%, I would say that is 90%. I don't think I'm even in these categories at the moment these days. I think I'm possibly in the aspirational at the moment. But I just wanted to get a sense because does this feel, do you recognise this? Does this feel comfortable? Okay. Be aware of that comfort as we move on to less comfortable spaces.
Yes, because fairly different picture when we talk about our ambivalent and aspirational readers. Neither of these segments enjoy browsing and they don't prioritise finding books. So they neither enjoy it nor do they do it very often, and this reflected in how often they find books to read, which was rarely to infrequently. And again, you can't read a book that you don't have. So there were a number of challenges. Ambivalent readers didn't really know where to find books. They weren't sure where to look. Aspirational readers didn't think it was worthwhile spending time looking for books. So we might need to reframe browsing as a behaviour. Ambivalent readers had difficulty matching their specific interests And both of them were more likely to rely on recommendations and word of mouth as like their key kind of criteria in finding books, which is a much more passive way of finding books if you're waiting for people to recommend something to you or to hear about something. So they're much more likely to be kind of the recipient of like somebody saying this must be something you read. And I'm so sorry to bring up Harry Potter, but like, you know, those books that like everybody is talking about, and you're like, oh, okay, well, I'll do that because I'm hearing about it so much. As opposed to knowing how to go out and find the different Harry Potter that is going to be equally as enjoyable to that person. So what that means is that when they're in a space looking for books, they're not nearly as confident. They're not as likely to have a plan. They probably don't know specifically what they're looking for. Very unlikely that they have a list. And also, some book environments might be really overwhelming to them, especially things that we might take for granted as like common sense, like genre areas in a bookstore. They might be like, I don't know if I want to be in fiction or sci-fi or romance. Like, I don't know even where to start with the categories of books. And bookish language might be unfamiliar. You know, if somebody's recommending tropes to you, you're like, I have no idea if I like friends to lovers or enemies to lovers. Like, how am I meant to know that? So all of these things that work really well for avid and engaged can actually backfire with these two segments. The things that do make it easier for these guys to latch onto books are short books and easy reads.
All right. One of the behaviours that they talked about with Harry Potter was that people would cover the books because they were actually loving the books, but on the tube they didn't want to be judged by the book that they were reading. So they would get plain covers and keep reading Harry Potter in the adult world, so to speak. All right, get your phones ready because I am now going to pitch to you 3 different reader types. We're going to look at aspiring, ambivalent and lapsed, aspirational, ambivalent and lapsed. And the reason is, of course, there's one group that we don't need to concentrate on, they're already there. There's a group that we can't really budge or it's going to have not much impact. But these 3 groups we think we can have impact. So you're looking at Sam. Sam's 38. She works full-time in a senior position in hospital. She's got 2 young children which keep her busy. And she used to really enjoy reading, particularly on holiday. She loved novels in particular, light-hearted rom-coms, and she saw books as time for her. She would like to read more, but she doesn't have much time at the moment. Now she finds she comes home from work exhausted. She might watch Married at First Sight or scroll on Facebook or something like that. But she does worry that her own children don't read or show enough interest in it. Sometimes she thinks about reading, but she gets overwhelmed when she goes to a bookshop or looks at ebooks on her Kindle and feels like she's out of the loop about what's good. Some of her friends read and have recommendations, but she doesn't have time to see them all that often and she can't quite remember the titles. Also, sometimes she feels embarrassed about reading trashy books and doesn't ask people for recommendations. So hopefully this will come up on your phone now. How can we engage with someone like Sam? And this is where we're looking for your insights. If we all know a Sam, if we've met a Sam, if we are a Sam, how do we engage with that type of aspirational reader?
And just to throw some potential ideas out there while you're jotting down your own ideas, like things that remind Sam about the enjoyment of reading, the comfort that she might get from it, are likely to work, as well as, sorry, I have notes. Reinforcing that like our reading habits change over time. People move in and out of these different groups as we go through different life phases, which is really normal. Making things kind of social, especially, you mentioned that she's worried that her kids might not be reading enough. Is there a middle ground of material with like chapter books that she could read with her family as a bit of a leverage point to get back into the habit, etc.
I love the idea of the monthly close and book swap with other women. That's a great way of socialising that sort of activity.
Yes, and love the book recommendation services. That's often a really good jumping spot for people to kind of find things that they might like. Audiobooks are a fantastic suggestion.
Can I ask you about the book recommendations, Breanna? So that obviously comes up a lot, and lots of people are like, and our report, we recommend that people should absolutely go and talk to a bookseller or a librarian because they're going to have some curated ideas for you. But that can be really nerve-wracking to go and ask someone. So I guess that what might be ways that we could get that same experience of book recommendation without that being... In the modern world, people don't like to speak face-to-face nearly as much as we used to.
Yes, well, there is this amazing thing called the internet where you can like Google, well, now you actually just ask AI, but like, sorry.
Hang on, we said we weren't going to mention the enemy.
Yes. Sorry, faux pas. But, you know, there are lots of websites that offer book recommendations online where you don't have to feel that pressure of speaking to a person. Or, you know, fear of judgment that, you know, you're doing it wrong or asking for the wrong type of book.
But I guess thinking about that social context, that those are trends in the world, that fewer people are comfortable speaking to other humans, is something to kind of build into the thinking. As is you've said the word overwhelm a number of times, Breanna. It's easy to overwhelm people, isn't it? There's a whole thing about how much choice you should give people.
Yes, choice overload is something that we talk about a lot and I don't know if anybody was at Book Up last year, but I specifically spoke then about if you don't know what you like, having a lot of options is going to be really overwhelming. So giving people a really long list when they don't know what they like is counterproductive. So it backfires because they're actually less likely to make a choice at all. So they're less likely to get any book. And they're more likely to regret their decision because they're like, oh, well, I obviously should have picked one of the other books. I've made the wrong choice. Whereas if you maybe only offer 2 or 3 recommendations, people are much more likely to commit to something and much more likely to be satisfied with that choice as well. So less options for people who don't know what they like is actually better.
Someone's called overload Netflix syndrome, where you're scrolling. Actually, I'm too tired to watch anything now. Yeah.
The one that's just dropping off the bottom there, assuring Sam that just 15 minutes a night is great. What about that messaging around just a short period of time?
So this is interesting because that is actually more likely to work for avid and engaged readers who are happy to jump on short periods of reading time. They're like, anything I can squeeze in is great. The weird thing about our ambivalent and aspirational readers is that they take longer to feel engaged with a book. So they have to read a book for about 20 to 30 minutes before they start to get engaged with the story, before they start to feel connected to it in some way. So if they're only reading for 15 minutes, we're not getting to that point where they're more likely to be engaged, which means that they're probably less likely to pick it up again the next night. So especially when people are starting books, for those 2 segments, we might want to be like, I know it feels like a commitment, but read for 30 minutes. Like commit to that time. And if you're into the book, fantastic. If you're not, maybe try a different book. Because otherwise, like as I said, like they're not going to feel engaged and they're not, you know, everybody probably can relate to that feeling of like, I haven't got into the book yet. Like I'm not invested enough in the book. So I'm not quite sure when I'm going to pick it up again. That's amplified for our ambivalent and our aspirational and presumably for our lapsed readers as well.
So one of the interesting kind of points and tensions about when we're thinking about approaching different segments is, okay, we don't want to start maybe with an overwhelming message of you've got to read for an hour. But at the same time, it's just having that awareness to be like, oh, the 15-minute message is probably not going to work for that group. So we need to do it a different way. And that might be the social aspect. Go and hang out with your friends and read for a little bit together, because we still want those other messages around you don't have to finish the book. It's not prescriptive. Just do what you enjoy to come through. So there's some sort of like contradictions that we have to find our way through around what's going to work.
Balance in like 15-minute increments might be fine once they're into the book and once they're like, yeah, I'm committed. I want to find out how this ends, but they need to be committed first. So that first reading period of a book is really critical.
Do we move on?
We can move on now, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on to our ambivalent reader, Amit. And it's going to get harder and harder as we go. Well, kind of, in a way. He's 19. He's in first year of uni. He's studying biochemistry. He listens to podcasts about science and history, and he also enjoys playing video games. His parents aren't really big readers. They're very, very busy. He used to read as a kid and in school, and he remembers liking some fantasy series. He rarely goes to a bookshop, but does sometimes look at books at the university library or sees them online on social media. Now he's not really sure if he likes reading or if he's a good reader. He's not sure what he'd like to read if he did start reading. So the question is, how do we engage with Amit?
Your ideas are all really fascinating and all really interesting to look at and help us prompt, okay, let's take a deep dive into that one. Let's look at how that fits. And we will be keeping hold of these, not with your names attached. It's okay.
This is great. The podcasts, using an interest and go, okay, is there a book version of that?
Yeah, so these are all fantastic ideas, because the main thing with these fascinating ambivalent readers is really almost like reframing what reading is and taking all of the pressure off what it is to be a good reader. So, opening up opportunity with audio books, recommending lots of different formats of books, linking it to their current interests is a really important way to leverage them into books. So understanding the podcasts that they like, the other things that they're engaged with. Book adaptations of video games are great. If there are like TV shows that are based off books that they've enjoyed, get them like onto the book.
I did like one of the other suggestions in the previous one, admit to slumps in reading. Life gets busier, there are peaks and troughs. So it's great to say we're all in the same boat. Sometimes we're busier than others.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things, again, from a behavioural perspective I'm really interested in, because we all go through periods where we read more or less. Everybody can relate to a reading slump, and understanding how we come out of reading slumps is really interesting. And a lot of people say it's driven by a particular book, but understanding the particular books that are going to interest people is really complex, obviously, and something I'm sure the industry
if we had a magic bullet for that would be amazing. Every teen would read tomorrow if we knew that.
Do you recommend comics or graphic novels? How do you phrase it? Either. Okay.
Graphic novels are more popular than comics now.
Graphic novels more popular than comics?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, reread the old favourites, start again.
And I think that's that's a great example with the research telling us that comfort is really important. So rereads there are a great way that speak to, if we think about what people want from reading, almost all the segments wanted comfort from reading. So rereads are something to be celebrated. It's okay if you're reading the same book 5 or 6 times. And again, not letting that unconscious bias come through around, well, maybe then they'll read something better or something else or something new. It's okay. It's a comfort thing. They're getting good value from it.
The books like the one of mathematics in The Simpsons are brilliant.
But I think all of these suggestions are so perfect for our ambivalent readers, and really, leverage that idea of like matching books to their specific interests, which might be quite niche. And I think, again, highlight the skill in being able to find those books that hook into their interests. And maybe some of our ambivalent readers need an avid reader in their life who can like almost mentor them to find those books.
Lots in here.
A mentorship program.
Lots in genre as well. So this is where things are moving towards becoming socially normal and socially acceptable to talk about romance fiction now, to talk about fantasy books, which wasn't until relatively recently. And so that's kind of a good example of a social norm being really beneficial for this kind of reader, because they're going to feel permission to do something that otherwise they might not have done. So how can you build an environment that is permissive and supports that kind of stuff and celebrates it?
That's good. Pinpoint the time when you feels like reading during the day. I mean, it may be hard to do that, but if you can get them to nominate a time, at least they have actually vocalised, oh, this is, it's to wind down at the end of the day. It's non-study material that I don't have to memorise, Could be
and that speaks to habits, doesn't it, Breanna?
Yes, and love this point because, again, we don't always feel like reading throughout the day. So actually explicitly thinking about when you want to read, whether that's first thing in the morning or on your lunch break or before bed. A lot of people did report the preferred time was winding down before bed, but then there's that conflict of like, well, I'm too tired to read or to read like the hard stuff or things. So there's a bit of tension there, but understanding when we want to read, because then we can try and make people commit in some way to incorporating that into their routine. And once it's part of your routine, it can become a habit, and habits are really hard to break. So then they'll read all the time, and it's great.
All right, I'm going to move on to our last reader, and it's a lapsed reader called Greg.
I
Greg.
thought this was you, Geoff.
Yeah, well, it is me. It's an old white guy, and he's got more hair than I have. He works as a courier or delivery driver. His job keeps him busy. He used to read some crime and history books, and he used to like that. He has fond memories of the comfort of being read to as a kid. He doesn't think of himself as a reader, has troubles concentrating on a book. He reads the papers online, he watches sports, he listens to radio. He hasn't read a book in 5 years, and none of his friends read. He never goes to a bookshop, but he does occasionally browse the books at Big W when he goes shopping with his wife. How would we engage Greg? Other than trapping him in Big W.
And not telling him the ending of
And
every
not
book.
telling
in the
him
shop.
the ending of the book.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
audiobooks are a fantastic idea for lapsed readers.
Mm-hmm.
It's, an easy way if they're...
Now, I don't want you to use the word audiobooks as a way of going, I give up. Huh?
Maybe there was some, oh yes, Tough Guy Book Club. Yes. But yes, love everybody jumping on audiobooks. Fantastic way to reintroduce a lapsed reader to reading, especially if they've been listening to podcasts or things. Like, you can promote it as like a fairly simple step over to an audiobook. Yep, linking to interests through, something seen in a newspaper, nostalgic comics. The other thing that we want to do with lapsed readers is just start with like small goals, like even if you're just listening to an audiobook every couple of weeks or every couple of months, like, very much want it to be kind of a pressure-free re-engagement with books and gently kind of increasing the frequency over time. We don't expect people to go from not reading for 5 years to reading every day.
We did a trip to Merimbula. We got an audio book. We said, we're set. That's fine. The audio book went for 9 hours. The trip was about 7.5. We get to Cairn River and we're so enjoying the story that I start slowing down. But we also were hungry, so we want to get there and all of that sort of stuff. So my wife and I had to make a date to sit and just listen to the last hour of this book because it was a terrific book. Sometimes they can get so engrossing that you have to finish the book somehow. Yeah.
And that's another great suggestion, probably unintentionally, Geoff, which is for our lapsed readers, as I said, we might not want to jump to every day, but those kind of more infrequent things where people have time, like holiday periods, long weekends, we can get them to commit potentially.
And benevolent gaslighting. You were happy then. Remember when you were happy, Greg? It was reading that made the difference. Yeah, that's right.
And it's a beautifully put way of kind of drawing out. You do want to make Greg feel like, remember that car, Jeannie? That felt so good. That was such a shared experience for the two of us. How wonderful that felt without saying, you should read. So how's another way that we can trigger that feeling in Greg without explicitly saying, go read a book now, Greg? So it's what does that look like in our own workplaces? Historical
maps. Greg, we've got a 1957 Melways that you might like. And he would probably go, the 57.
My father-in-law is obsessed with Melways.
There is a niche group, and I don't know, of people that collect Melways. And I found one in the back of an old car that we bought, and I told a friend, and he said, I have to see this Melways of yours. So I'm like, okay, it's old maps of Melbourne. No, you don't understand. Freeways were marked on the map that that were never built. And he spoke about it like it was this mystical Game of Thrones thing. Anyway.
That's a lapsed reader that we've caught.
Yes, that's right.
You know, we have reeled you in on that basis because we found the thing you love. And that is an amazing sign of when you have caught someone, is when they tell you and they get all lit up and so excited and energetic. And that's what we're looking for, is how do we trigger that in different kinds of people.
There's a great
I'm glad someone
suggestions.
mentioned Big W. How many independent booksellers are in the room tonight? Hello, you're awesome, brilliant, excellent. It is definitely a different segment here that we've got that would be your usual customer, I'm thinking. And it's a really interesting one and a bit contentious. But that's where we see a different segment having their often only exposure to books.
All right. We're going to move to the wrap-up now.
I'm just going to very quickly kind of summarize some of the lessons across those 3 segments that we've spoken about. So basically some of the takeaways are for our aspirational readers. We want to showcase maybe how reading can fit into their busy life, maybe through role modeling, promote kind of slowly increasing the frequency and avoid that kind of like you must read every day and like jump into very heavy, serious books. For our ambivalent readers, kind of reframing what it means to be a reader, really promoting all of those different formats of reading and connecting them to their interests. And I just keep coming back to that Simpson. I'm going to go and look for it. It's just such a perfect example of like, you know, niche interest that can get people really excited about the content. And again, we want to like avoid intimidating books. And for our lapsed, audiobooks were the clear winner of how we're getting lapsed readers engaged again, as well as kind of shorter books, easy reads. And for all of the groups, we kind of want to avoid comparing reading to other leisure activities to make it a competition and reframe reading kind of the benefits that people get from it by itself.
So again, that's the comfort, that's the energy, that's not using language like put the screen down, because then we're actually drawing attention to the competition. We instead put the emphasis on the positive. What behaviour, Breanna frames, I'm stealing Breanna's words now, what's the behaviour we want to see, and reinforce and spend more time on talking about the behaviour we want to see, not the behaviour we don't want to see. So leveraging that positive, making it feel comfortable, easy, accessible, no pressure. They're all the kinds of takeaways. And so for the industry, thank you for coming and starting this conversation with us on how we start to unpack these kinds of readers and where we take it next. What's it going to look like for how we might redesign some programs, how we might redesign some services we offer, and here at Australia Reads, we're looking at how do we work towards what do the next big national reading campaigns look like? And I say campaigns plural because there is no silver bullet. It's got to look different for different people, and that's kind of our key takeaway. But we also want the opportunity to kind of talk to you and for you to come and grill us and give us great book recommendations as well, please. So I hope that can be the second half of the evening.
So basically, we've got a couple of QR codes here if you want to like and subscribe to Australia Reads and BehaviourWorks Australia, and we can send out the slide deck to you as well. But we just want to say thank you. These are their funders and partners, and we also want to make sure we get a totally spontaneous photo that Gavath is going to take now with the three of us.
Yeah, all right.
Completely.
Totally spontaneous. Maybe someone's come up with a great idea over there. And or we're looking over here and go, exactly, right? Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Give yourselves a round of applause. And I think basically now is the time to have a chat to Anna. Are you the Australia Reads person?
No, Rebecca is here
Rebecca.
too.
Okay, so
Anna, up the back,
Rebecca,
very much
up,
not.
Please.
The report looks beautiful because of Rebecca and our designer Connor. So,
and we've got from BehaviourWorks Australia, we've also got Elise Lennox. Stand up, Elise. So we would like you to enjoy, eat the sandwiches, have the refreshments, and mingle. We've got a good half hour here. So this is your chance to have a chat to Anna and Breanna and each other about some of the techniques. Thank you so much for these. They will all be collated and collected and fed back into futures reports.
yeah, there will be more coming. I can't actually tell you what it is yet, but there's more stuff on the way about reading research where we dig down a little bit.
Should we do a change room just on The Simpsons maths? I think it's okay. That's a good. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Geoff.